When you stand before the mirror, what do you see? You see an image that you accept as yourself. But I tell you now, that image is not the true self. The true self is the awareness that observes the image. And this awareness, this consciousness is God. I am is God. Not a God that exists outside of you, but the God that exists as you. The very consciousness with which you perceive the world is the one creative power in the universe. Now, when something feels impossible to you, it is only because you stand in a state of consciousness where a thing is not yet realized. The feeling of impossibility is nothing more than your current state of consciousness. But consciousness can be shifted, can be changed, can be transformed through the deliberate use of imagination coupled with feeling. The eightfold repetition before the mirror that I suggest to you is not some magical incantation, but a deliberate act of impressing upon your subconscious mind a new concept of self. When you stand before the mirror and repeat 8 times with conviction and feeling, I am that which I desire to be, you are engaging in the most sacred act of creation. You are claiming your divine inheritance as a creative being. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this principle. A young woman came to me in despair. She had tried for years to conceive a child, and the doctors had told her it was physically impossible. She had exhausted every medical treatment available and had resigned herself to a life without the joy of motherhood. I told her about the law of assumption and instructed her to stand before her mirror each night and morning and repeat 8 times, I am a mother. I feel my child in my arms. I hear my child's laughter. I am what I wish to be. At first, she found it difficult to overcome the evidence of her senses, the medical reports, the years of disappointment. But gradually, as she persisted in this practice, something began to change within her. She began to feel different. She began to think differently. She began to see herself differently. And within 6 months, against all medical opinion, she conceived and later birthed to a perfectly healthy child. Was this a miracle? By conventional thinking, yes. But I tell you, it was simply the operation of an eternal law. She changed her concept of self, and the universe rearranged itself to accommodate this new concept. The repetition of 8 times is significant. In many ancient traditions, 8 represents new beginnings, resurrection, and infinity. When you repeat your assumption 8 times, you are symbolically breaking free from the limitations of the past and entering into a cycle of manifestation. You are infinity asserting itself through you. Now, let us delve deeper into the mechanics of this law. The world you experience is nothing more than your consciousness externalized. Every person you meet, every circumstance you encounter, every object you perceive is your consciousness objectified. There is nothing outside of your consciousness. Therefore, to change your world, you must change your consciousness. This is the forbidden knowledge that the masses do not understand. When something feels impossible, it is because you are conscious of its impossibility. You have accepted as final, certain so-called facts of life. But I tell you, there are no facts that cannot be revised. What you now consider a fact was once only a possibility that you or someone else accepted as true. And what is now impossible to you can become a fact through the same process, the process of assumption. To use this forbidden law, when things feel impossible, you must first understand that the feeling of impossibility itself is just that, a feeling. It is not truth. It is not final. It is merely your present state of consciousness. And consciousness can be changed in an instant through the deliberate use of imagination. Stand before your mirror and look deeply into your own eyes. See beyond the physical reflection to the awareness that is looking out through those eyes. That awareness is the God in you. That awareness is the only creative power. Now, with this understanding, repeat 8 times, I am now that which I desire to be. Feel it, know it, accept it as true already. The mirror serves as a powerful tool because it reflects back to you your concept of self. As you speak to your reflection, you are addressing your subconscious mind directly. The subconscious does not reason or argue. It simply accepts what the conscious mind impresses upon it with feeling and repetition. And once accepted by the subconscious, these impressions must objectify themselves in your world. This is law, not opinion. Let me explain why this law seems forbidden. Throughout history, humans have been taught to look outside themselves for power, for salvation, for the fulfillment of their desires. They have been taught that they are separate from God, that they are sinners in need of redemption, that they are victims of circumstance. This teaching serves those who wish to control others. For if you believe your power lies outside yourself, you will always be dependent upon external authorities. But the truth, the forbidden truth, is that you are God in expression. I and my Father one, said the greatest teacher who ever lived. He did not say, I and my Father will be one someday, or I and my Father are almost one. He declared the present reality of this union. And so it is with you, though you may not yet be conscious of it. When you truly grasp this principle, you will understand why repeating an affirmation 8 times in the mirror can. You are not begging some external power to grant your wish. You are awakening to your own divine nature and exercising the power that has been yours from the beginning. The feeling of impossibility is the shadow cast by your current state of consciousness. Just as darkness is not a thing in itself, but the absence of light. Impossibility is not a reality, but the absence of the consciousness of possibility. Turn on the light of a new assumption, and the darkness of impossibility must vanish. Now some will ask, if this law is so simple and so powerful, why doesn't everyone use it successfully? The answer lies in persistence and faith. Most people dabble in creative imagination without the conviction necessary to impress the subconscious. They affirm with their lips but deny with their hearts. They say, I am wealthy while feeling poor. They declare, I am healthy while feeling sick. Such divided minds cannot create effectively. The secret to successful creation is the attainment of a single-minded consciousness. You must think from the end, as if your desire were already fulfilled. You must live in the consciousness of already being that which you desire to be. And this consciousness must be maintained until it becomes your predominant state. The 8-fold repetition before the mirror helps to establish this new state of consciousness. It serves as a ritual of transformation, a deliberate act of self-persuasion. But the words themselves have no power apart from the feeling they evoke. It is the feeling that creates. The words are merely the vessel that carries the feeling. Let me give you another example from my own experience. Years ago, I desired to travel to Barbados to visit my family, but I lacked the means to do so. Rather than dwelling on my lack, I began a practice of standing before the mirror each night and morning, repeating 8 times, I am in Barbados. I feel the tropical breeze on my skin. I embrace my family with joy. I am in Barbados now. As I did this, I would close my eyes and actually feel myself there. I would imagine the specific scenes I would experience, the familiar streets, the faces of loved ones, the unique scents and sounds of my homeland. I lived from that state of consciousness, not as something to be attained in the future, but as a present reality. Within weeks, through a series of events that I could never have planned nor anticipated, I received free passage to Barbados. Was this coincidence? No, it was law. The law of consciousness expressing itself. I had imagined the end, lived from it mentally, and the means to that end naturally followed. This is the forbidden law that makes the impossible possible. It is forbidden not by any divine decree, but by the limitations of human understanding. The natural man cannot accept that consciousness precedes reality, that the inner creates the outer, that the invisible determines the visible. Yet this is the very foundation of all creation. When you stand before the mirror and repeat your assumption 8 times, you are engaging in a sacred act of creation. You are declaring your independence from external conditions. You are claiming your birthright as a created being. You are exercising the only true freedom you will ever know, the freedom to choose your state of consciousness. But remember, the mirror is only a tool. The real work takes place within your mind and heart. The mirror practice is effective because it combines several powerful elements: reflection, seeing yourself, verbalization, speaking your desire, repetition, impressing the subconscious, and focused attention, the power of concentration. Together, these elements create a potent force for transformation. Now, some may wonder about the phrase, when it feels impossible. If something truly feels impossible to you, how can you sincerely assume that it is already yours? This is where the art of revision comes into play. Revision is the process of reimagining past events in a way that aligns with your desired outcome. If your current sense of impossibility stems from past failures or disappointments, revise those experiences in your imagination. See them not as evidence of limitation, but as stepping stones to your success. Reinterpret them in light of your new understanding. This is not self-deception. It is spiritual wisdom. For the past exists only in memory, and memory can be changed through the deliberate use of imagination. Stand before your mirror and say 8 times, that which seemed to limit me has actually prepared me for my good. My past does not determine my future. I am now free to be what I desire to be. As you do this, feel the truth of these words. Let the feeling of freedom and possibility replace the feeling of impossibility. The number 8, as I mentioned earlier, has special significance. It represents infinity, abundance, and new beginnings. In many cultures, 8 is the number of resurrection, the transcendence of limitations. When you repeat your assumption 8 times, you are symbolically entering into this consciousness of infinite possibility. But why the mirror? The mirror provides immediate feedback. It shows you yourself, not just your physical appearance, but your state of consciousness reflected in your eyes, your posture, your expression. As you speak your assumption and look into your own eyes, you are confronting your concept of self directly. You are saying, in effect, this is who I truly am, regardless of appearances. The power of this practice lies not in the words themselves, but in the shift of consciousness they facilitate. The words are like keys that unlock new states of being. When you declare, I am now that which I desire to be, and feel the truth of this declaration, you are literally shifting your consciousness from one state to another. And since consciousness is the only reality, this shift must be expressed in your outer world. This is the forbidden law that few understand and even fewer consistently apply. It is forbidden because it places the responsibility for creation squarely upon your shoulders. You can no longer blame circumstances, other people, or even God for your condition. You must recognize that your consciousness is the cause of all that appears in your world. When something feels impossible, it is because you are conscious of its impossibility. Change that consciousness through the deliberate use of imagination, and you change the outcome. This is not positive thinking or wishful dreaming. This is the fundamental law of creation operating through human consciousness. The biblical statement, let there be light, is not a historical event that occurred once in the distant past. It is the perpetual creative process taking place within human consciousness at every moment. Your assumptions imbued with feeling are your let there be, and your experiences are the and there was that inevitably follow. The eightfold repetition is a practical application of this principle. It is a way of impressing upon your subconscious mind a new concept of self with sufficient intensity to bring about a change in consciousness. And a change in consciousness must result in a change in manifestation. Let me tell you of another case that demonstrates this principle. A man came to me who had struggled with poverty all his life. He believed that wealth was for others, not for him. He had tried various means of improving his financial situation, but always with the underlying assertiveness fighting an uphill battle. I instructed him in the use of the mirror technique. 8 times each morning and each night, he was to look into his own eyes and declare with feeling, I am now expressing financial abundance. I am now worthy and capable of receiving unlimited supply. Money flows to me easily and continuously. At first he felt foolish, even dishonest, making these statements that so contrary to his experience. But I explained to him that his current experience was merely the harvest of his previous assumptions, and that new assumptions persisted in would inevitably produce new experiences. Gradually, he began to feel a change within himself. The declaration became less mechanical and more natural. He began to think differently about money. Opportunities that had always been present but unnoticed now became apparent to him. Within 6 months, his income had tripled, and more importantly, his entire relationship with money had transformed. Was this man special? Did he possess some unique talent or advantage? No, he simply applied the forgotten law that I am sharing with you tonight. He changed his consciousness, and his world changed accordingly. This is available to all of you. When something feels impossible, when the evidence of your senses denies the fulfillment of your desire, stand before your mirror and repeat 8 times with feeling and conviction, I am now that which I desire to be. Feel the reality of it. Accept it as true already. Live from that state of consciousness and watch as the so-called impossible becomes your living experience. The mirror technique is particularly effective because it engages multiple senses and faculties. You see your reflection, you hear your voice, you feel the emotions associated with your declaration. This multisensory engagement helps to impress the new concept more deeply upon the subconscious mind. But remember, the mirror is just a tool. The real transformation takes within your consciousness. The mirror practice is a means to an end, not the end itself. The end is the changed concept of self, the new state of consciousness from which you now view the world. When you truly understand this principle, you will see that there are no limits to what you can be, do, or have. The only limit is your consciousness, your concept of self. Change that, and you change everything. Now, some may ask, what about the will of God? What if my desire conflicts with divine intention? To this, I would say that your desires are God's desires. The awareness within you that says I am is God. When you truly desire something, it is God in your desiring expression. God's will is not separate from your deepest, truest desires. The feeling of impossibility comes when you perceive yourself as separate from the source of all things. But in truth, there is no separation. The kingdom of God is within you, said the great teacher. All power, all possibility, all fulfillment exists within your own consciousness. When you stand before the mirror and repeat your assumption 8 times, you are aligning your individual consciousness with the infinite consciousness that is God. You are claiming your divine inheritance. You are acknowledging the truth of your being. This practice is not about forcing or manipulating external reality. It is about awakening to the reality of who you truly are. As you awaken to your true nature as a creative being, the conditions of your life naturally adjust to reflect this awakened state. The feeling of impossibility is always based on past experience, on what has been. But creation is not concerned with what has been. It is concerned only with what is now being assumed. When you assume a new state of consciousness, you are literally disconnecting from the past and establishing a new causal sequence. The practice of repeating your assumption 8 times before the mirror helps to break the hypnotic spell of past experience. It is a declaration of independence from what has been and a commitment to what now is in consciousness. And what now is in consciousness must objectify itself in experience. Let me share another example of my own experience. Many years ago, I desired to become a successful speaker and teacher of these principles. At the time, I had no platform, no audience, no formal education in these matters. By conventional standards, my desire seemed impossible. But rather than accepting these limitations, I began to assume the state of being a successful teacher. Each night and morning, I would stand before my mirror and declare 8 times, I am now a successful teacher of the law. I am now reaching thousands with this message. I am now expressing with clarity and power. As I did this, I would feel the satisfaction of speaking to attentive audiences. I would imagine specific scenes, people approaching me after a talk to express gratitude, letters arriving from those whose lives had been transformed by these principles. I lived in this state mentally until it became natural to me. And then, through a series of events that seemed coincidental, but were in fact the operation of law, opportunities began to present themselves. I was invited to speak at small gatherings, then larger ones. People began to seek me out for counsel. Books and recordings of my talks began to circulate. What had seemed impossible became my living reality. Was this because I was special, favored? No, it was simply the operation of the law that I am sharing with you tonight. I changed my consciousness, and my world changed to reflect that new consciousness. This same power is available to each of you. Whatever may seem impossible to you now, whether it be financial abundance, physical healing, a harmonious relationship, or professional success, can become your reality through the proper use of this law. The key is to persist in your new assumption until it feels more real to you than the evidence of your senses. The eightfold repetition before the mirror is a powerful aid in this process, but it is not the only way. Throughout your day, in every moment of choice, remind yourself of who you have chosen to be. Think from that state, feel from that state, act from that state. The feeling of impossibility will gradually fade as your new assumption takes root in consciousness. What once seemed like pretense will begin to feel natural. The effort required to maintain your assumption will diminish. Eventually, you will find yourself living spontaneously from your new state, without conscious effort. This is the mark of successful creation, when your assumption has become your natural state of being. At this point, the manifestation of your desire is inevitable. It cannot be otherwise, for the outer must always conform to the inner. Experience must always reflect consciousness. The forbidden law that I am sharing with you tonight is not new. It has been taught in various forms by all the great spiritual teachers throughout history. What is new, perhaps, is the practical application of this law through the mirror technique. This technique provides a structured way to impress your new assumption upon the subconscious mind with sufficient intensity to bring about transformation. When something feels impossible, remember that the feeling itself is just that, a feeling, a state of consciousness. It is not truth. It is not final. It is merely your present perception based on past experience. And perception can be changed through the deliberate use of imagination. Stand before your mirror and look deeply into your own eyes. See beyond the physical reflection to the awareness that is looking out through those eyes. That awareness is God in expression. That awareness is the only creative power in the universe. Now, with this understanding, repeat 8 times. I am now that which I desire to be. Feel it. Know it. Accept it as true already. The world you experience is nothing more than your consciousness objectified. Therefore, to change your world, you must change your consciousness. This is the forgotten truth, the forbidden knowledge that puts you in direct touch with your creative power. When you truly grasp this principle, you will understand why nothing is impossible to you. For if consciousness is the only reality, and you can change your consciousness, then you can change your reality. It is as simple and as profound as that. The practice of standing before the mirror and repeating your assumption 8 times is a powerful tool for changing consciousness. But remember, the words themselves have no power apart from the feeling they evoke. It is the feeling that creates. The words are merely the vessel that carries the feeling. As you engage in this practice, strive to feel the reality of your assumption. See yourself as already being what you desire to be. Feel the satisfaction, the joy, the gratitude that would be yours if your desire were already fulfilled. This feeling is the creative power that transforms the invisible into the visible. The number 8 represents infinity, the transcendence of limitations. When you repeat your assumption 8 times, you are symbolically breaking free from the constraints of the past and entering into the unlimited possibilities of pure consciousness. You are declaring your independence from what has been and claiming your freedom to create what will be. The mirror serves as a powerful tool because it reflects back to you your concept of self. As you speak to your reflection, you are addressing your subconscious mind directly. The subconscious does not reason or argue. It simply accepts what the conscious mind impresses upon it with feeling and repetition. And once accepted by the subconscious, these impressions must objectify themselves in your world. This is the law, not my opinion or theory. It has been tested and proven by countless individuals throughout history. Those who have discovered this law and applied it consistently have transformed their lives in ways that seem miraculous to the uninitiated. But there are no miracles in the conventional sense, only the natural operation of universal law through human consciousness. When something feels impossible to you, it is because you are conscious of its impossibility. Change that consciousness through the deliberate 8-fold repetition of a new assumption, and you change the outcome. This is not positive thinking or wishful dreaming. This is the fundamental law of creation operating through you. The biblical statement, all things are possible to him that believeth, is not a religious platitude. It is a statement of law. Belief is simply consciousness, the acceptance of something as true. When you truly believe, not with your intellect alone, but with your whole being, you are exercising the creative power that is your divine inheritance. The 8-fold repetition before the mirror helps to establish this new belief, this new consciousness. It serves as a ritual of transformation, a deliberate act of self-persuasion. But the words themselves have no power apart from the feeling they evoke. It is the feeling that creates. The words are merely the vehicle that carries the feeling. So when you stand before your mirror and repeat your assumption 8 times, put all of your emotion, all of your conviction, all of your being into it. Make it more than words. Make it a declaration of who you truly are. Feel the reality of it. Accept it as true already. Live from that state of consciousness and watch as the so-called impossible becomes your living experience. This is the forbidden law that makes the impossible possible. It is forbidden not by any divine decree, but by the limitations of human understanding. The natural man cannot accept that consciousness precedes reality, that the inner creates the outer, that the invisible determines the visible. Yet this is the very foundation of all creation. When you understand this principle and apply it consistently, you will discover that there are no limits to what you can be, do, or have. The only limit is your consciousness, your concept of self. Change that, and you change everything. Tonight I have shared with you the most practical and potent law that governs all creation, the law of assumption. I have given you a specific technique, the 8-fold repetition before the mirror, as a means of applying this law when something feels impossible. Now it is up to you to test this law in your own experience. Do not take my word for it, prove it to yourself. Stand before your mirror and repeat 8 times with feeling and conviction, I am now that which I desire to be. Do this consistently morning and night, until your new assumption becomes your predominant state of consciousness. Then observe how your outer world begins to rearrange itself to reflect this new consciousness. Opportunities will appear that were not visible before. Resources will become available that seemed beyond reach. Circumstances will combine in ways that you could never have planned or anticipated. And what once seemed impossible will become your living reality. This is the promise and the power of the forbidden law. Use it wisely, use it consistently, and discover for yourself that nothing is impossible to you when you understand and apply the law of consciousness. For consciousness is the only reality, and you are that consciousness in expression. Tonight, as you leave this place, take with you this one truth. You are not a victim of circumstances, you are the creator of circumstances. Your consciousness is the cause, your experience is the effect. Change the cause, and you change the effect. Stand before your mirror and declare 8 times, I am the power that creates my experience. I am now that which I desire to be. Feel it, believe it from it, and it must be so. Remember, the feeling of impossibility is not the truth of your being. It is merely a temporary state of consciousness that can be changed through the deliberate use of imagination coupled with feeling. The 8-fold repetition before the mirror is a powerful tool for effecting this change. Use it when things feel impossible and discover the forbidden law that makes all things possible to you. The practice I have shared with you tonight is not just a technique, it is a way of life. It is a recognition of your true nature as a creative being. It is an acknowledgement of the inseparable unity between your consciousness and the creative power of the universe. When you truly grasp this, you will understand why nothing is impossible to you. For in truth, you are not separated from the source of all things. You are that source in individual expression. The awareness within you that says I am is God. And God's power is your power. God's abundance is your abundance. God's love is your love. God's wisdom is your wisdom. The feeling of impossibility comes when you perceive yourself as separate from this source. But in truth, there is no separation. I and my Father are one, said the great teacher. This was not a special relationship available only to him. It is the eternal truth of all being. You and the Father, you and the creative power of the universe are one. When you stand before the mirror and repeat your assumption 8 times, you are acknowledging this unity. You are claiming your divine inheritance. You are exercising the only true freedom you will ever know, the freedom to choose your state of consciousness. This is the forbidden law that makes the impossible possible. Use it, test it, prove it in your own experience. For in the end, experience is the only true teacher. No amount of theory can convince you of this truth. You must live it to know it. And so I say to you tonight, when something feels impossible, stand before your mirror and repeat 8 times with feeling and conviction, I am now that which I desire to be. Do this not as a mechanical exercise, but as a sacred act of creation. Feel the reality of your assumption. Live from that state of consciousness and watch as your world transforms before your eyes. For this is the law and the promise, as within, so without. As above, so below. As in consciousness, so in manifestation. This is the eternal truth that sets you free from all limitation, from all impossibility. This is the forbidden law that is now revealed to you as your own divine inheritance.